A book is sitting on a shelf right now. Someone is looking at it. They pick it up, read the back cover, put it down, pick it up again. They buy it. The transaction takes 40 seconds. They have no idea that between the first word the author wrote and this moment on this shelf, 11 years passed. 187 rejection letters arrived. 3 complete versions of the manuscript were written and abandoned. A literary agent who was supposed to change everything did not change everything. And one decision was made, quietly, without ceremony, on a Tuesday afternoon that looked like every other Tuesday afternoon, that most writers never make. This is the full path, not the version where talent is recognized and the rest is history. The actual path from the first sentence to the published book, and everything between that nobody thinks about when they imagine becoming a writer. Stage 1 is the first serious attempt, and it is almost certainly not the manuscript that gets published. Most writers who eventually publish a book did not publish the first thing they wrote seriously. According to data collected by researchers studying debut novelists, 8% of debut authors wrote at least one complete novel before writing what eventually became their published debut, with an average of 3.24 books written before reaching publication. That number is probably an undercount. It counts completed manuscripts. It does not count the half-finished novels abandoned in desk drawers, the short story collections that were practice without knowing it was practice, the years of writing that felt like failure and were actually the education. The first serious attempt teaches you something that nothing else can teach: the gap between the story you imagined and the story you are capable of writing at this stage of your development. The novelist and essayist Annie Dillard spent years writing before she published anything that reached a wide audience. Her observation about the writing life was blunt and accurate. The written word is the technology that most closely resembles thought, and mastering it is not a matter of learning rules. It is a matter of developing a relationship with language that takes longer than anyone is comfortable admitting. You write the first serious manuscript, you finish it, you feel something that is a mixture of exhaustion and pride and uncertainty. You think it might be good, you genuinely do not know. And here's the thing about that uncertainty: it is appropriate. It means you have developed enough taste to recognize that the question of quality is not simple. The writers who have no uncertainty about their first manuscript are usually the ones furthest from being ready. Stage 2 is learning how the industry actually works, and it is more complicated than writing the book. Most aspiring authors understand in a general way that books go through a publishing process. What they do not understand until they begin trying to navigate it is how specific and structured and counterintuitive that process is. The traditional publishing industry in the United States and the United Kingdom operates as a multi-gated system. The gates are not designed to keep out bad books. They are designed to manage the impossible volume of manuscripts that the industry receives and to filter toward the books that specific agents and specific editors at specific publishing houses believe they can sell to specific readers in a specific market at a specific moment. Understanding this is not discouraging, it is clarifying. The question is not whether your book is good. The question is whether your book is good enough, specific enough, marketable enough, and timely enough to pass through each gate in sequence. These are related questions, but they are not the same question, and conflating them is one of the most common and most expensive mistakes new writers make. The first gate is the query letter. A query letter is a single-page document, in practice usually between 200 and 300 words, that must accomplish 4 things simultaneously: describe your book compellingly enough that an agent wants to read it, demonstrate that you understand the market your book belongs in, establish your credibility as a writer, and do all of this in a voice that matches the voice of the book you are describing. It sounds manageable. It is not manageable for most writers on the first attempt, or the third, or sometimes the 10th. The query letter is a genre unto itself, and mastering it requires understanding that an agent reading queries is not reading literature. They are reading pitches, and pitches are evaluated against different criteria than novels. A single literary agent may receive between 100 and 500 query letters in a single week. They sign on average 1 to 2 new authors per year. The math is unambiguous. The vast majority of queries, even the good ones, are rejected not because the book is bad, but because the agent already has a book like it, or does not represent that genre, or has a full client list, or received the query on a day when nothing was clicking. The rejection is impersonal in a way that is extremely difficult to experience as impersonal. Stage 3 is querying, and it is a sustained campaign that most writers are not prepared for. The query process is not a single submission. It is a systematic campaign conducted over months, sometimes over years. Literary agents accept queries only for genres they represent, and only through submission processes specific to each agent. Researching which agents to query, crafting personalized letters for each, tracking responses and non-responses, and managing the psychological weight of accumulating rejection while continuing to write. This is the actual texture of the querying stage, and it bears no resemblance to the way it is described in romantic narratives about literary discovery. Kathryn Stockett, the author of The Help, was rejected by 60 literary agents before the 61st agreed to represent her. The Help went on to spend 100 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and sell more than 15 million copies. Frank Herbert's Dune was rejected 23 times before finding a publisher. It became the best-selling science fiction novel of all time. Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time was rejected by 29 publishers. These are not exceptional stories about exceptional books being unfairly dismissed. They are typical stories about how the publishing industry actually functions as a system that produces enormous numbers of false negatives consistently and structurally. The writers who survive the querying stage are the ones who understand two things simultaneously. The rejection is almost never about the quality of the book, and the book almost always needs to be better. Holding both of these truths at the same time without letting either one collapse the other is a specific psychological skill that most writing programs do not teach because it cannot be taught directly. It can only be learned through the experience of sending something into the world and watching it come back. Stage 4 is the literary agent, and the relationship is not what you imagined. When an agent offers representation, the experience is unlike anything the writer has prepared for. After months or years of systematic rejection, a single yes from a single agent can feel like the end of the story. It is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new and equally demanding stage. A literary agent is not a publisher. An agent is an advocate and a negotiator who submits your manuscript to editors at publishing houses on your behalf and negotiates the terms of any deal that results. Before submitting, most agents will request revisions, sometimes substantial ones, to bring the manuscript to what they believe is its most commercially competitive form. These revisions can take months. They are frequently the best editorial feedback the writer has ever received, and they are frequently also the most difficult to implement because they require the writer to dismantle something they believed was finished. The submission process to publishers, conducted by the agent, typically involves sending the manuscript to multiple editors simultaneously. This is called going on submission. It is another waiting period, another accumulating silence, another series of rejections that arrive in a different form but feel similar in weight. An editor can love a book and not acquire it because their publishing house already has something too similar, or because the sales team does not believe in the commercial potential, or because the timing is wrong for the market. The reasons are real and the rejections are impersonal, and none of this makes them easier to receive. Some manuscripts go on submission and sell quickly. Some go on submission and do not sell at all. An agent can genuinely believe in a book and be unable to sell it. This is not a failure of the book or the agent. It is a function of how the industry works, a system that is simultaneously the best mechanism the literary world has developed for connecting writers with readers, and a system that produces consistent and structural inefficiencies that bear no reliable relationship to literary merit. Stage 5 is the book deal, and it is not the end of the work. It is the beginning of a different kind of work. According to publishing industry data, only 1 to 2% of submitted manuscripts receive a traditional publishing deal. The acceptance rate for unsolicited manuscripts, those submitted without agent representation, is even lower, ranging from 0.5% to 2% across major publishers. These numbers are not intended to discourage. They are intended to describe the actual landscape so that the writer who is in it can navigate it accurately. When a deal is offered, it comes with an advance against royalties, a payment made before the book earns any money, which the book must then earn back through sales before the author sees additional income. Advances for debut authors range enormously, from very small sums to occasionally very large ones. The average advance for a debut novelist from a major publisher is difficult to determine precisely because the industry does not publish this data systematically, but estimates from publishing professionals consistently suggest that most debut authors receive advances that would not support a full year of living expenses in a major city. This is not a reason not to pursue traditional publishing. It is a reason to understand what you are pursuing. The advance is not a salary. The royalties, if the book earns out, represent a percentage of the cover price, typically between 10 and 15% for print books, minus the agent's 15% commission. The financial reality of traditional publishing for most debut authors is that the first book does not fund the second book, and the path to sustainable income as a published writer requires either multiple books over multiple years or supplementary income from adjacent activities: teaching, speaking, journalism, consulting. Stage 6 is the publication process, and it takes longer than you expect. After a deal is signed, the manuscript moves through a publishing timeline that typically spans 12 to 18 months from acquisition to bookstore arrival. This timeline includes developmental editing, copy editing, proofreading, cover design, marketing planning, and the logistics of printing, distribution, and retail placement. During this period, the writer is simultaneously finishing a manuscript they thought was finished, reviewing edits they thought were resolved, and beginning to think about what they will write next. The marketing and publicity resources allocated to debut authors by traditional publishers vary enormously based on the size of the deal, the genre, the publisher's expectations for the book, and the current priorities of the marketing department. The romantic notion of a publishing house investing heavily in every book it acquires is not consistent with how publishing actually works. Most books receive modest support. The author carries more responsibility for visibility, platform, and audience building than the publishing model historically required. Stage 7 is publication day, and it is quieter than you imagined. Publication day arrives, the book is in stores. The work that has occupied years of your life is available to strangers, and the experience of that day is almost universally described by authors as anticlimactic. Not because the achievement is not real, because the achievement was made over years of invisible work, and the day the book appears is just the day it appears, not the day the real thing happened. The real thing happened on a Tuesday afternoon that looked like every other Tuesday afternoon, when you decided to keep writing after the manuscript came back. Or the morning you rewrote the first chapter for the 4th time and it was finally right. Or the night you finished the first draft and sat alone with it for a long time before doing anything else. Those were the days the book was made. Publication day is the day it becomes visible. Most traditionally published books go out of print within 3 to 5 years of publication. The average lifetime sales of a traditionally published book are lower than most people outside the industry would guess. The books that sell hundreds of thousands of copies are the exceptions, and the exceptions are visible precisely because they are exceptional. The infrastructure of the publishing world is built on an enormous volume of books that sell modestly and are read by the people who needed them, which is the actual purpose of books and a real form of success that the cultural conversation about bestsellers consistently obscures. Stage 7.5 is something nobody names, but everyone who has been through it recognizes: the silence after submission and what you do inside it. Between the moment your agent sends your manuscript to editors and the moment any editor responds, there is a period of time that can last days or weeks or months. During this period, you are waiting for a decision about something you cannot influence. The manuscript is finished, the agent has done their work. There is nothing left for you to do except write the next thing, which is exactly what every experienced writer will tell you to do, and which is exactly what almost no first-time author manages to do. The writers who eventually build sustainable careers are almost universally the ones who learned at this stage that the waiting is not the work. The writing is the work. The waiting is the administrative context in which the writing happens. This sounds like a simple reframe. It is not simple. It requires a fundamental restructuring of where you locate your identity as a writer, away from the outcome and toward the process, away from the question of whether this book will sell, and toward the question of what you are learning from writing the next one. The writer and researcher Stephen Johnson spent years observing how ideas develop across long creative careers. His conclusion was specific. The people who produce meaningful work across decades are not the ones who produce important work and then wait to see what happens. They are the ones who treat production as continuous, who understand that the career is the accumulation of time spent working, not the accumulation of outcomes that result from working. The outcomes follow the work. They do not replace it. Most writers who go on submission with their first manuscript do not immediately write the next thing. They wait, they check their email, they interpret the silence. They convince themselves that a fast response means something, and that a slow response means something else, and that both of these interpretations are correct, and that neither of them is correct, and that the uncertainty is unbearable. This is the experience of going on submission, and it is the experience of every writer who has done it, and knowing this does not make it easier. It makes it slightly less lonely. Stage 8 is what comes after the first book, and this is where most writers either find their footing or do not. The writers who build careers in publishing are almost never the ones who published one successful book and rested. They are the ones who understood from the inside that the career is the accumulation of books, and that each book teaches you something the previous one could not, and that the development of a writer across a body of work is a different and longer and more interesting process than the development of a single manuscript across its revisions. The average age of debut novelists is 36 years old. This is not a coincidence. It takes time, not as punishment but as requirement, to accumulate the specific combination of technical skill, emotional intelligence, worldly experience, and psychological resilience that literary fiction requires of the people who write it well. The writers who begin young and publish young are not exceptions to this rule. They are writers who reach the necessary accumulation faster, and they are statistically rare. The path does not end with publication. It continues, and it continues to require everything the beginning required: the willingness to start sentences you do not know how to finish, to revise what you believed was finished, to send work into the world knowing it will come back, and to return to the page on the Tuesday morning that follows the rejection with the same seriousness you brought to the Tuesday morning that followed the acceptance. A book is sitting on a shelf right now. Someone is going to pick it up. The 40 seconds it takes them to decide will bear no visible relationship to the years it took to write. That is not unfair. That is simply how it works. The invisible labor becoming the visible thing, the private accumulation becoming the public object, the years of Tuesday mornings becoming the one afternoon someone else holds in their hands. The first sentence of your next manuscript is the beginning of that. There is a version of this path that looks from the outside like a series of lucky breaks. A writer discovers they have a gift. An agent notices them. A publisher takes a chance. The book finds its audience. The career unfolds.